Hello and welcome back for another week of Smash Mountain Football's NFL pod. And I'm here once again with Conor, our UK-based journalist, to talk all things NFL. Well, Conor, how are you keeping today?
Doing amazing, thanks. Off the bye week with my Lions, but yeah, it's looking forward to another week of NFL.
Yeah, we're up to week 10. And because the last week was all the trade deadline um, happenings, this week we're going to do a bit of a mid-season review. So we've a few different topics, and again, what we'll do is just opinion, and whatever player you come up with, I'll have to go with a different player, and vice versa. So we're not agreeing too much.
Yeah.
So the first thing I want to do is, Conor, halfway through the season, who do you think is going to win? Who do you think is the best quarterback in the NFL based on what you've seen so far this season?
Yeah, I think it's a guy that has won MVP before. It was a couple of years ago, but I think Lamar Jackson for the Ravens has been amazing this year. I mean, he still currently leads the league in rushing yards for quarterbacks. But what I've been most impressed with is passing the ball. He looks rejuvenated as a passer, really. I've never seen it's so threatening to see a guy that can run the ball so well and pass it right now. So I think the Ravens offense and the Ravens in general have looked amazing. And Lamar Jackson, he's got his MVP form on, and he's exceeded that with how well he's passing the ball right now as well.
What do you think they've changed in with the Ravens in terms of him getting so many completions?
Well, obviously, like I say, they changed their offensive coordinator up. It was kind of a big change in the season, and they brought in the Georgia guy. I can't remember his exact name. I remember it's Todd something, but yeah, he's the Georgia offensive coordinator. Obviously, they're off the back of two national championships, so he's transformed it. And like I say, they added receivers to him in Zay Flowers and Odell Beckham. So they've given him weapons, and he's produced really.
Yeah, and especially the fact that he's thrown a lot. He's kind of saving his legs for the postseason. I think with the Eagles as well. I see the Eagles kind of doing that as well. I think Jalen Hurts might be carrying an injury, but he's not running a lot compared to last season. And I'm wondering whether or not they're just trying to keep defensive coordinators honest and save a lot of these plays for the postseason. I will go with Josh Allen. I think Josh Allen has had a really, really good season. I think the Buffalo Bills offense doesn't have a run game. I think their defense is after losing a lot of big players, but I think Josh Allen has been performing week in, week out. But in the last 2 weeks, Joe Burrow has looked back to his best and could come the end of the season, could very well be an MVP after a very, very quiet opening 6 weeks of the season. But at the moment, at the first half of the season, I'm going to go with Josh Allen. So Offensive Player of the Year, we're going to go with non-quarterbacks. I actually think this is the way it should go at the end of season NFL honours. I think Offensive Player of the Year should always be a non-quarterback because it always just goes to quarterbacks. They should nearly have their own category. So, who's your Offensive Player of the Year, not including quarterbacks so far?
I mean, I guess I'll take the reins again, and with the pick, I'm going to go Tyreek Hill. Really, he's been, we know him for years now and what he can, and he's the best player on the best offense in the league, in my opinion. With the Dolphins, he's already broken 1,000 yards for the season, 8 touchdowns. Looks set to maybe break Calvin Johnson's record receiving yards in a season record with the extra game. We'll see if he can maybe do it in 17 games, which I think records should maybe still stick to that. But yeah, he's been a massive threat for the Dolphins, and like I say, he's been playing so well. Even Jaden Waddle is not really getting as many opportunities with Tua. So I think for me that was a pretty simple one.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say he's arguably been the best wide receiver for the last 10 years. Maybe even since Calvin Johnson in the league.
Yeah.
I'm also going to go with a wide receiver. I'm going to go with AJ Brown from the Eagles. Again, the Eagles are the best team statistically in the NFC, and he's been their best player this season. He's been dominating in the air. He's kind of reminded me a bit of Randy Moss. Every time they throw the ball down the field and he goes up with a cornerback, he's coming down with the ball. And he's had some sensational scores, and he's really kind of kept this Eagles offense ticking over. I think he went through a 5 game spell with over 125 yards receiving, and for me, he's been just dominant. And I think he will be in the end of season Offensive Player of the Year conversation if he keeps going the way he's going. So let's switch over to the defense. Who's your Defensive Player of the Year so far?
I'll let you take the lead as I've gone first on
Okay.
the last two.
The best player I've seen this season on defense is Max Crosby of the Las Vegas Raiders. For me, he is just dominating every game I watch. Um, when you look at the other candidates, a lot of them have a lot of help on their defense. But for me, Max Crosby is nearly a one-man team in that Raiders defense. He's showing up week in, week out, pressurizing the quarterback, and almost on a lot of plays, getting a lot of sacks, and just being a real leader for that team. And I know it's not one of the best teams in the NFL, but he's stands out like a sore thumb in all the games I've seen so far, and I don't think he gets the credit he deserves. So for me, my pick is Max Crosby. What about yourself, Connor?
Yeah, I would have taken Crosby myself. Like I say, he's been amazing for the Raiders. But I'll take another edge rusher, and I'm going to go Myles Garrett. I think he's favourite right now for Defensive Player of the Year. And to me, I think he's one of the most complete edge rushers for a long, long time. Definitely in the league right now. And I think maybe, like I say, for the last decade, he's a guy that he's great against the pass. He's great against the run. He's massive as well. He's a freak athlete. He's already got 9.5 sacks for the year. With 4 forced fumbles as well. I remember early on in the season he was doing his little crossovers to fool the center, and he still get the sack. So yeah, I think it's Garrett or Crosby. They've both been amazing this year.
Yeah, you left out Garrett's blocking field goals as well.
He can do it all clearly.
He could do it all. Yeah, just he's been immense for the Browns this season. I think the Browns are one of those teams that they're going under the radar. They have a really, really good defense. They probably haven't got it together on offense yet, but when they do, they could be a really scary team. They could be a team that, come to the end of the season, hit form at the right time and could take some stopping in the playoffs if they get there. Considering there's 4 teams in the AFC North that are above 500. I think the worst team in the AFC North are 5-3, and which is incredible, really. I mean, could all 4 teams make the playoffs? I think that's a possibility.
The AFC, like you say, is so deep, and there's gonna be a few good teams that miss out on the playoffs.
So let's go for rookie offense. So we're going to go for any player on offense who's a rookie that you would like to that you think is been the best rookie so far.
Yeah, I think there's 3 guys really that are all contention. I think one's probably ahead of both of them, and to me that's CJ Stroud. I mean, he's coming off a crazy performance right now, 470 passing yards, 5 touchdowns. I mean, he's probably already won Rookie of the Year on offense. If we're being honest, after that, I think he's got 14 touchdowns for the year, 1 interception. He's broken the Ohio State QB curse, if you wish already. I know it's very short, but him in the Texans have been amazing, really. And like I said, I think he's there was a lot of talk in the draft. Was it Bryce Young, CJ Stroud? And Bryce Young was typically the number 1 guy many people gone for, but Stroud has started the season amazingly and definitely looks like the better pick so far.
Yeah, I haven't backed his rookie of the year. I think I got him at 7-1, so I'm happy about that. But he's been sensational. He looks like a really, really special player. Certainly going to be a franchise guy for the next 10 or 15 years if the Texans can hold on to him. I am going to go with a non-quarterback, and I'd say it's one of the 3 lads you probably have shortlisted in Puka Nakua. He's made the difference in a lot of games for the Rams. He's got loads of catches, loads of yards, and he's just been a make the difference players for the Rams offense. I would have considered very strongly Will Levis just based on his last 2 weeks. I think he's been sensational. I think, again, he's a guy with a rocket of an arm, but he also seems to be accurate. And, he's turned around one of the most boring offenses in the Tennessee Titans. And the last 2 weeks have been sensational to look at. Even in the match against the Steelers, he was the best player on the field, even though he threw an interception with just a few seconds left. But in terms of the season so far, Puka Nakua, for me, he's been sensational. He's been one of these players that I think a lot of GMs around the league will be ask themselves, why didn't they go for him a bit earlier? Who was the third player that you were? Who are the players you were also thinking of talking about?
Like I said, I think CJ Stroud obviously, and then as you said, Puka Nakua, and I also thought I had Jordan Addison in there for the Vikings. I think with Kirk Cousins now obviously down, that might affect him on the second half of the season, but he's been really good. I mean, 7 touchdowns for a rookie. Started the season a bit slow as well, but Justin Jefferson went down, and he's really stepped up as a number one guy for them. I think a lot of people, they lost Adam Thielen, so they thought, could he step up to and be a number 2? And he's done one further. And I think if Justin Jefferson comes back, and they've got a deadly offense there, the Vikings have, and I think their defense is very underrated as well. So I was very against the Vikings last year, and this year I think I'm a bit on them a little bit.
And he's turned you around. You weren't too hot on him at the start of the season. You were saying maybe this wasn't a pick that was going to work, but he's won you over with his performances.
Yeah, that is true. Actually, I remember saying that in one of the previews, and so I guess he's done me there, and maybe I'm sweating a little bit that they could catch us at the NFC North. But it'll be very interesting down the back end with the Lions and Vikings playing each other twice in the last 3 weeks, because that could determine the division.
And what did you make of, just very quickly, with Josh Dobbs? He's barely off the plane. The next thing, there's an injury and he's in the game in the first quarter and he leads them to a win.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty spectacular. I remember you see, like, at the beginning of the game, him literally practicing snaps with his centre. And they've never done that before. So it's a great win for the Vikings. I mean, I'm not going to get too hot on it because, like I say, it took them the very last drive and a miracle drive to beat a pretty average Falcons team. But yeah, what he's just done there is pretty spectacular.
Okay, let's switch over to Defensive Rookie of the Year. I'll take this one at the start, and I'll be interested to see who you're going to pick after this one, because for me there's one standout candidate, and that's Jalen Carter. For me, he's been as advertised. A lot of people thought he was the best player in the draft outside of quarterbacks last year, and I think he's proven to be. He's very, very disruptive on the line. He gets after the quarterback through the middle. He'll remind you of a young Aaron Donald, which is very high praise indeed. And he's just so aggressive. He gets off blocks. He gets off double teams. For me, he's going to be one of the great players in the NFL possibly over the next 10 years if he keeps going the way he's going. And for me, he's been the outstanding defensive player of the year that I've looked at so far. But there has been others, and I'd be interested to see who would you pick as your rookie defensive player of the year so far.
Yeah, like I say, Jalen Carter's a good one. The talent is like I say, it's outstanding. It's always been the character was the talk with him going into the draft. But I've gone for a guy in the secondary. It may be a bit biased, but I've gone for Brian Branch. I've loved this guy when we drafted him, and through training camp he was amazing, and he had the pick 6 week 1, but he slowed down a little bit. He had a little ankle injury that's kept him out for a couple of weeks, but what he does for the Lions defense is honestly amazing for a rookie. He plays that nickel position, but he affects the passing game, and he's so good in the run game as well. He literally plays as a linebacker near enough, and when you got a guy like that smart that can basically be a fourth or third linebacker and also match up with a tight end or running back out the backfield, I think he's a guy that can so versatile that he's going to be great for our defense for years to come.
Yeah, and he hits really hard and he gets interceptions. He's certainly become a favorite on our podcast, and he's really been a really, really outstanding player. So we're going to switch up now to who do you think is the best team in the AFC?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned them earlier, and I think it's Baltimore Ravens right now. Like I said, I think they honestly have one of the best offense and defense in the league, and it's going to be really interesting because, like you said there, Lamar, he isn't running as much, and that's typically been a problem. They look great in the regular season, the Ravens have for the last few years, but once it gets to the postseason, they start to break down a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see if that pattern follows with how they're going. But yeah, they've looked amazing. I mean, they absolutely destroyed the Lions a couple of weeks ago, and then they've destroyed another playoff team in Seattle this past week. So they look dominant. Like I say, they there's really nothing they can't do right now, and I would pick them between anyone to beat right now. They're the best team in the league for me.
I think the fact that Lamar has been so successful in his passing, he's going to be a lot fresher, come to the end of the season and probably into the playoffs. I think the last 2 years in December, he's picked up injuries where he's missed nearly the last month of the season in both the last campaigns. And I think getting him more receivers is kind of like allayed to that. He's I think we could see a fresh Lamar Jackson in January, and be very, very, very hard to stop a fresh Lamar Jackson in playoff football. I am going to go with, it's a big surprise, but they're a little favourite of mine, and that is the Bengals. And the reason why I'm going to go with the Bengals is basically what I've seen in the last 2 weeks since Joe Burrow has really kind of come back from that injury. I think they are a very, very balanced team on both sides of the ball. I think they have an offense when Joe Burrow is in this form that could put up points against any team. I could see them really ripping poor teams apart, but also really, really high level teams. I think they've got great receiving trio in T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, and Tyler Boyd. They're starting to bring their tight ends into it. They can run the ball with Joe Mixon. Burrow can pick up yards with his feet. So they have so many weapons, but also one of the reasons why I'm picking them as well is their defense. I think they're just a very, very smart defense. They've got playmakers all over the field. They probably could do with a little help in their defensive backs, but I think they've got excellent linebackers. I think their front is very, very good. They probably rely a bit too much on Trey Hendrickson in terms of getting those sacks, but he's a brilliant player, and I think if they stay injury free, they're going to be one of those teams in the playoffs. They're going to be very, very hard to stop. The reason why I didn't pick the Chiefs is basically the fact that their offense hasn't really been lit on fire yet. And another team I kind of considered was the Dolphins. I've been very, very impressed with the Dolphins on offense and defense so far. But as you said, the AFC is just nearly all the best teams, with the exception of maybe one or two, are coming from the AFC side of the draw. So in terms of the NFC, who's your favourite?
I think it's a bit of an interesting one. I think if you asked me a couple of weeks ago, I would have said San Fran. Like the Ravens, they look so good on both sides. But I think for the minute, you got to go Philadelphia. I mean, they are 8-1. I don't think they're as good as they are last year on offense and defense. So I feel a bit not right picking them. But yeah, they've beaten the Cowboys, who I think were another contender for that pick, and they've got a very tough schedule coming up. So like I say, their season could do a complete 180 in the next couple of years, or they could show that they are still a very serious team. So I think, like I say, the last couple of weeks, the NFC's looked a bit weaker, but yeah, it's going to be the Eagles for me.
Yeah, the Eagles, they're winning all the games, but I think if you take AJ Brown out of that team, I think they're struggling in a couple of different position groups. And I think they will be caught out at some stage. I agree with you. I don't think they're as good as they were last season. And I'm going to go with the 49ers. They've lost their last 3 matches, but I think when you have this team fully fit, they're the best team for me anyway in the NFC. I think they've brilliant players at all 3 levels of their defense. Nick Bosa, Fred Warner. They're getting Chase Young to help with the pass rush. I think they're a dominant defense, and I think as the games kind of ramp up in importance as we get to the end of the season, we're going to see this defense play out. And then on offense, you've got so many playmakers: Debo, McCaffrey, Ayuk. I think if they can stay injury free, I think they are the team to beat in the NFC, and I'd be surprised if they're not in the championship game. For me, I think they're going to be in the Super Bowl. But you never know in the NFL. One injury or a loss of form here or there, or a loss here or there could make a big difference. But for me, the 49ers are, just in terms of their personnel, I think they have the best team in. I actually think the best team in the NFL.
They're adding Chase Young to that now as well, so that would be really interesting to see him opposite Nick Bosa next week.
Yeah, and the fact that they used to play with an Ohio State together, they're good friends. I think their pass rush will be obviously helped out, and having Chase Young might even allow Javon Hargrave to get more kind of one-on-one matchups, Nick Bosa to get one-on-one matchups. I think they're going to be a dominant team in the fourth quarter when the other teams are trying to pass the ball near the end of the game. I was actually reading a lot about Chase Young, and supposedly, no matter what happened, he wasn't going to be in Washington next season. They weren't going to give him the contract. So I'm there's definitely a few questions about him in that regard, that supposedly the Commanders wanted to keep Montez Sweat, but the offer was too good, but they had no interest in keeping Chase Young beyond this season. So I thought that was interesting. It certainly wasn't something I was aware of until he left. And let's go with the last bit was, who's your coach of the year so far?
Yeah, so with Coach of the Year, I mean, a lot of the time the award at the end of the season just goes to the coach with the best record. But I like picking the coach that surprised me or the team that surprised me most, and for me, that's the Texans. So Demarco Ryans. Like I say, the Texans have really surprised me this year. They're 4-4, but the last 2-3 years they've been horrible. Probably been the worst team in the league the last 3 years straight. But he's come in. He's from that San Fran background. I loved him on being the DC there. He took over Robert Saleh very well, and like I say, it's not even the defense that's really performing for the Texans right now. It's this offense. He's got it going with Stroud. The passing game's looking good, and they're doing it without a running game as well. So I think this Texans has a very bright future. And like I said, I don't think they could maybe push Jags for that division. I think they're a bit far off of that, but they've definitely shown me they've got a lot of potential.
Yeah, they're one of the teams I'm really looking forward to watching on prime time. They've been kind of not in prime time for most of the season, but you can't but be impressed with the turnaround. They were the worst team in the NFL last season. They've one of the youngest rosters as well. They have a really, really young roster. I've been very impressed with them. I think they're going to be around for a long, long time. And so CJ Stroud is one of those quarterbacks that you'd pay money to watch. He really looks like he's going to be a special one. I'm going to take a different approach, and I was actually going to pick D'Amico Ryans as well, but since you picked him, I am going to go with Mike McDaniel with the Miami Dolphins. And the reason why I'm going to go with him is, he's just so innovative offensively. I think he has an offense that is really at the top of the game in terms of coaching. He's doing it in a way that no one else has done it. He kind of taken the Kyle Shanahan system and put his own kind of spin on it, really attacking down the field rather than side to side with the West Coast offense. And he's the players to do it. He has the Jalen Models and the Tyreek Hills, and he's put a huge emphasis on speed and running back. They're electric to watch. And I think on the other side of the ball, their defense is very, very underrated. I think they have a lot of playmakers there, and they're about to get a Ramsey back at cornerback. And I think we could see a really good defense become possibly a great defense with him coming back, and he'll basically be able to take out, if he comes back to form, the best wide receiver of the other team. And I think we'll really see what this Dolphins defense is made of. I think they are certainly one to watch for the rest of the season, and in the postseason I think they're a really ascending team. So Mike McDaniel is my pick for Coach of the Year through 8 weeks. But I like that pick of D'Amico Ryans. I would have gone with that as well.
Yeah, it's certainly a few candidates out there.
Oh yeah, there's some awesome teams in the NFL at the moment. I like that even the best teams are losing matches. They're being put to the pin of their collar most weeks, and it bodes well for an exciting January. So let's go to Thursday night football, and we have the Chicago Bears playing the Carolina Panthers. And it was interesting researching this game of just how many players that played for both teams. And especially DJ Moore was probably the big transfer during the trade for when the Panthers went to get the number one pick. And with that number one pick, they selected Bryce Young. What do you make of Bryce Young? He's obviously he's been under the radar, but also under a lot of pressure considering that the second pick of the draft, CJ Stroud, is knocking it out of the park. And he seems to be on a team that is struggling in a major way this season. So,
yeah.
Go on.
Oh, sorry. No, like I say, yeah, he has struggled to start this year. And I think the Panthers were a team at the beginning of the year that I actually quite liked the look of, with how they were doing and how they were building things. But yeah, it hasn't quite come to plan this year. I think Bryce Young hasn't been perfect. He obviously has made a lot of rookie errors, but that offensive line in front of him has also been really poor. He's taken a lot of hits, and he's missing a few receivers as well. I mean, Adam Thielen's been really good for them, but DJ Chark, who's a guy that I thought could do really well for them, he's not quite hit off like they thought they would, and the run game struggled as well. Miles Sanders has really struggled away from Philly. So I think it's a very collection of a lot of things and a stuff that's not going to plan. They're in a rebuild. This is their first year under Frank Wright, so you've got to give him time in that sense. But yeah, it's definitely not the ideal start for the number one pick.
Yeah, he seems to be under pressure all the time, and I think if he didn't have such good feet, I think he's got 28. He's been sacked 28 times this year, and if his feet weren't so good, that would be a lot higher. I agree. their offensive line has really, really struggled. Ekwanu, who looked like a good rookie last year, is playing very, very poorly. And they don't seem to have any weapons. They lost their best receiver in DJ Moore to the Bears. And I think Thielen has really stepped up and been a leader on that offense. But, I don't know what's going on there. They seem to be a team not going anywhere fast. And, David Werner and David Tepper, who he sacked the head coach of the Charlotte FC soccer team this week. And although he came from the Steelers, he doesn't seem to have a lot of patience with head coaches. And Frank Reich, as you said, it's his first year in charge. But I don't think that, I think that trigger is going to be pulled at some stage if they keep going to where they're going. One of the other problems with the Carolina Panthers has been their defense. They have some outstanding individual talents like Brian Burns, Frankie Louvu at the linebacker has been really, really outstanding. But I think they're one of the worst teams against the run this year. What do you make of the Panthers defense? Are they playing a lot worse than the talent that they have in the team?
Yeah, I think they are. Like I said, there is talented players on this defense, and it was a defense that was actually trending upwards last season towards the end. But I think it's a little bit hard. Like you said, they've not been good against the run game. They did quite well against stopping Jonathan Taylor against the Colts, but in the secondary especially, they've had a lot of injuries. I mean, J.C. Horn, who I think is a really, really underrated cornerback's been injured for the majority of the year. Same with Dante Jackson, and I know C.J. Henderson's out this game, and Xavier Woods as well. He's a rookie safety or a second year that, again, they've been really beaten up in that secondary. So they're starting to hopefully get some back as the years progress. But that defense, I think it needs to create an identity, and that's going to have to start with stopping the run, which they've been pretty poor at.
Yeah, and there's some really good players on their defensive line. Like, Derek Brown has looked good. Brian Burns is a brilliant player. He's been injured quite a lot. How do you think they actually go about, stop and run and getting better at that?
Like I say, yeah, Derek Brown, he's typically a run stuffing guy, and he's been suffering in the past game. I mean, they're going to be missing Brian Burns for this game against Chicago, which is going to be a pretty big loss for them. But it's more so a scheme or anything. Like I say, you passed the trade deadline, so you can't add anything now. So obviously something's not going right in the scheme. I know Frank Wright's changed the play calling up on the offense. He's given another coach the permission to do that. So he's open to change, and he might have to do that on defense if he wants to see some better performances.
And going back to Bryce Young, how highly do you rate him? Like, what do you think his ceiling is in the NFL?
I really do rate him. I think out of college he was definitely my QB1 in this draft, and like I said, I don't want to put a ceiling for him. I think it's tough because of his size. We've never seen a quarterback this small before, but he has that Patrick Mahomes skill set about him. At least the way he gets round the pocket and, like I say, controls the pocket. He's so good at that, and he makes plays for himself in that way. And I feel as time goes on and he gets used to the NFL, we will see that more. So I think it is going to be hard in that he doesn't have the arm strength and the size like Patrick Mahomes, but he definitely has those characteristics, and I think he can definitely be a franchise quarterback once that starts to develop more.
Yeah, when I look at him, every time he gets out of the pocket, he looks really dangerous. I think what defenses are trying to do is just get him to stay in the pocket and see if he can beat him from the pocket. I think he's looked good so far. Obviously, results haven't gone their way, but I don't think that's particularly on Bryce Young. But when you're starting to throw pick sixes, 2 pick sixes in a game, people will start to get a bit more critical. I think the fact that he's a rookie, he's getting kind of getting a clean slate in terms of being allowed to make mistakes this season, and I think he really needs to just continue to progress, and hopefully we'll see him play a good game on Thursday Night Football. What do you make of the Bears? I mean, they're missing their starting quarterback in Justin Fields. I think he's likely to come back in the next week or two. As things stand, they have the second and third pick of the draft because they have Carolina's pick. Their defense and offense, I think there's a lot of talented players on this roster. Why do you think they've struggled so much this season?
Yeah, they're a funny old team with the things they do. I think I do question the decisions the general manager does. I think they're a team that's in a rebuild, but he does a lot of moves for long term, and then he does a lot of moves for the short term, and I feel they just crisscross, and it's a bit. It just doesn't make sense for me. A lot of it, I think. One thing I've always stand on is I think they need to build around Justin Fields, and I don't think they have done that on offense. I think he's gone crazy on defense. I mean, he went crazy with Tremaine Edmonds and Jordan Hicks at linebacker, and he's now given Montez Sweat a crazy deal after paying a second rounder there. So, but offense, obviously they've gone out and got DJ Moore, who I really like, but I feel they need to add more to that. I still think their offensive line just is poor. I still think it is, and Cole Kmet at tight end, I don't think it's good enough as well. And the running game, they've got a few nice players, but they let David Montgomery go, who's absolutely thriving right now in Detroit. So I do question the moves upstairs a lot, and I think they haven't done enough for Justin Fields. Obviously, he's not on the field right now, but yeah, I think they're a team that I definitely see them being better than what they have for the first half of the year. I can see them picking up a few wins on the back end, but future-wise, I'm not sold on them from a long-term project.
Yeah, I tend to agree in terms of the general manager. I think some of his decisions have been short-term in terms of the Montez Sweat. The Chicago Bears, they have a lot of studs on defense. I think they have a really, really good defensive backs, really, really good linebackers. They're one of the best teams against the run in the NFL, but they're also the team with the worst pass rush. I think they've only had 10 sacks after 9 games, which is almost averaging 1 sack a game for a defense, which is pretty shocking. He gave up a lot, as you said, a second-round pick and a huge contract to Montez Sweat. Could that help turn the defense around? I think it will. I think it'll certainly help in terms of pass rushing, and their offense. It's hard to know what they're doing in offense. I think if you look at their offensive line, they have some talent on offensive line, but they don't seem to have any weapons. And it's a pity with Justin Fields missing. It's a huge mountain for Tyson Bagent to come in as an undrafted rookie and kind of run this offense. How do you think they'll go on Thursday Night Football against the Panthers? One thing I expect them to do is give the ball to Deontay Foreman and let him run the ball. They should be able to run the ball and hopefully maybe get some play action off the back of it. DJ Moore is obviously going to be wanting the ball against his old team, and I expect him to be targeted a lot in this game. How do you think Thursday Night Football is going to go?
Yeah, I think whoever, like I say, runs the ball better, I do think it's going to be the team that wins this game. I think DJ Moore will be in for a big game. Like I said, I think both teams have been pretty good against defending the run, actually, especially the Panthers against the Colts at least last week. So it's going to be an interesting one in that aspect. And if like I say, if one team starts running the ball better, that's going to open up the play action game for two quarterbacks that are struggling at the minute. And yeah, I think the Bears probably would be more likely to do that. And yeah, I think DJ Moore, similar to a couple of weeks ago when he had a big game, I think he could be in for another against his former team.
Yeah. I think the Bears have better players, so I'm kind of going for the Bears. But yeah, I think the Bears as well. I really want to see Bryce Young pull a good performance out of the bag. I think it's the first time the Panthers have been on national TV in terms of a primetime game in America, and I think if he shows progression in his game and this Panthers offense can start to put numbers up, I think they played well enough in the last 2 weeks. Hopefully they can kind of build on that. But I still think the Bears are going to win. I just think they have better players, and it's as simple as that. So we might leave it there for this week, Conor. I enjoyed that chat, and one of the things I like about Thursday Night Football is they're two poor teams, but it should be a level game. And give me a game with two even teams, and they're usually more exciting to watch than if one team is better than the other.
Yeah, like I said, it's definitely no gimme result in this game.
Who do you think needs to win more, the Bears or the Panthers?
I do think the Bears need to win more. Like I said, I think they're further down their sort of progression or whatever, down their rebuild, and I think a win for them is more needed. But yeah, the Panthers, I think they need more of a good performance than a win, if anything.
Yeah, no, I agree. Want to see the Bryce Young season kind of get up and running. All right, Conor, so we'll talk to you next week, and thanks for that chat.
It's a pleasure as always.